Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're starting a journey. Not a trip on a map, but a trip through time itself. We begin at the very start, with a river whose name reminds us of old wisdom, the Saraswati. Many have heard of it, but few have seen it. It was once a powerful river, bringing life-giving water across the flatlands of northern India. Along its rich banks, one of the world's oldest ways of life began. This wasn't just a place for farming and trading. It was a place where ideas grew, a place where knowledge was created. The people who lived here were pioneers, building some of the first planned cities the world had ever known. Imagine those old towns, buzzing with activity. The air filled with the sounds of artists, the songs of priests, and the laughter of children. This time of creating and learning is perfectly shown by the divine, Lord Brahma, the creator, who brought the universe into being, and with him his partner, the goddess Saraswati. She is the spirit of knowledge, music, art, and wisdom. It's not a coincidence that the river which helped this new way of life grow shares her name. The river was the real source of life, while the goddess showed the smart and spiritual life that grew beside it. The connection is deep, isn't it? The people of the Saraswati Valley weren't just surviving. They were trying hard to understand the world around them. They developed ways of writing, math, and looking at the stars that were far ahead of their time. The hymns of the Rigveda, some of the oldest holy writings known to humans, were written on the banks of this very river. They are full of praise for the Saraswati, calling it a great caring mother. The river was the lifeblood for their bodies, and the goddess was the inspiration for their minds. In this golden age of beginnings, Brahma's creation was cared for by Saraswati's flowing wisdom. But as we all know, time keeps moving. Nothing, not even a powerful river, stays the same forever. The very source of their wealth was meant to disappear. The weather started to change, and the ice that fed the great Saraswati began to melt away. The water flow became weak, the seasons became hard to predict, and the land became dry. For the people who had known only the river's kindness, this was a crisis they couldn't imagine. Their world, built over hundreds of years of steadiness, was starting to fall apart. A big part of our story was ending, and a difficult, unsure change was about to begin. The slow, quiet drying of the Saraswati was a disaster of huge size. It was a big upset, a great destruction. The cities that had once been full of life and business started to empty out. People had to leave their old homes, their farms, and the graves of their ancestors. They started a big move, a desperate search for a new source of water, a new start. This was a time of huge hardship, confusion, and change. A whole way of life which had seemed to last forever was being erased by time. This time of destruction and new beginnings has a strong divine parallel in our traditions. This is the area of Lord Shiva, the destroyer, but his destruction is never without a reason. He is also the great holy man, the one who meditates in the middle of chaos. He represents the power that breaks down old things to make room for new ones. The drying of the Saraswati was like a cosmic dance, a powerful dance that took apart a civilization. It forced people to leave their past and move towards an unknown future. They traveled east, drawn by the promise of another big river system, one that flowed from the very heart of the Himalayas. They were moving towards the Ganga. The story of Ganga's coming down is deeply connected to Lord Shiva. The story tells us that the river Ganga was a powerful heavenly flood, too strong for the earth to handle. It was Lord Shiva who, with his huge strength, caught the river in his tangled hair, calming its destructive power and letting it flow gently onto the earth for the good of people. This story is a beautiful way to show the migration. The journey from the Saraswati to the Ganga was not easy. It was a rough and confusing change, a flood of people moving across the land. It needed a guiding, calming force to turn this upheaval into a new, stable life. In this story, Shiva is not just a god of religion, he is a symbol of historical change. He represents the huge changing power of nature and the toughness of people who go through it. The end of the Saraswati civilization was not the end of the Indian story. It was a needed destruction, a wiping clean of the slate. Lord Shiva, by taking the shock of this big change, allowed for a new cycle to begin. The people, having gone through the storm of this change, arrived on the banks of the Ganga, ready to build their world again, carrying the seeds of their old knowledge with them. After surviving the big upset, the people found their new home along the rich plains of the Ganga. Here, life slowly started to become steady. The river flowed all year, fed by the never-ending snows of the Himalayas, offering a promise of consistency that the Saraswati could no longer give. On these new lands, small communities grew into villages, and villages grew into powerful kingdoms and grand cities. A new way of living and governing started to form. This time of coming together, keeping things safe, and setting up what is right, finds its divine echo in the third great god of our Trinity, Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the preserver. His job is to keep the balance of the universe, to protect the world, and to make sure that what is right wins. When chaos threatens to take over people, he comes down to earth in different forms or incarnations to bring back order. The new way of life that grew in the Ganga plains was all about creating a steady, organized society. Great empires like the Mauryas and the Guptas rose and fell here. It was a time when laws were written down, arts and sciences grew again, and grand ideas took root. Vishnu's calming, organizing presence can be felt in this whole part of our history. This time of steadiness also gave birth to our great epic stories, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These are not just stories. They are basic texts that explore the difficult parts of human life, duty, fairness, and right and wrong. It's no surprise that the main characters of these epics, Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, are forms of Vishnu himself. Rama, the perfect king, sets up a righteous kingdom, a Ram Rajya. Krishna, the divine planner and thinker in the Mahabharata, guides the Pandavas through a big war to bring back what is right. These stories, born in the heartland of the Ganga, show a society deeply concerned with keeping things safe and in order. The world of the Ganga was a world protected by Vishnu. While the Saraswati era was about creating and the Shiva-like change was about breaking things down, the Ganga era was about bringing things together. It was about building lasting institutions, creating a culture that could be kept safe and passed down through generations. The river provided the physical food, and the idea of Vishnu provided the moral and spiritual framework. This long period of steadiness allowed Indian civilization to grow, to deepen its philosophical roots, and to create a cultural legacy that still defines us today. When we look back at this long journey, from one river to another, an interesting pattern appears. The Hindu trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, often seen only as religious figures, can also be understood as a deep way to think about how history itself works. They are not just gods to be worshipped. They are symbols that show the repeating nature of civilization itself. Every society, every culture, goes through these stages of creation, keeping things safe, and destruction. Our own story, written on the land we live on, gives a strong example of this endless cycle. Let's review. The age of the Saraswati was the age of Brahma. It was a time of birth, of new beginnings, when the foundations of a great civilization were laid. Knowledge was created, cities were built, and a new culture bloomed. It was a period of pure, simple creation. Then came the big change. The drying of the river was a moment of cosmic ending, a destructive force that ended an era. This is the stage of Shiva, the transformer, whose powerful dance breaks down the old to make way for something new. It was a period of chaos, moving and painful but necessary renewal. After the upheaval, the people settled along the Ganga. This new stage was about steadiness, order, and taking care of what had been rebuilt. This is the age of Vishnu, the preserver. It was a time of setting up what is right, building lasting empires, and writing down the knowledge and stories that would keep the culture going for thousands of years. The forms of Vishnu, Rama, and Krishna became the guiding ideas for this new settled society. Creation by Brahma, followed by destruction by Shiva, leading to preservation by Vishnu. This is not just old stories, it is the rhythm of history itself. This cycle, of course, does not stop. History is not a straight line, it is a wheel that keeps turning. Within the long age of Vishnu, there have been countless smaller cycles of creation and destruction. New ideas are born, old empires fall, and society constantly changes and keeps its main identity. The Trinity, therefore, gives us a way to understand our own past, present, and future. It teaches us that change is the only constant, and that every end is also a new beginning. It is a very thoughtful way of looking at the grand, sweeping story of our people. So what do we learn from this epic journey from one holy river to another? We learn that our history and our old stories are not two separate things. They are deeply connected, flowing together like the Ganga and Yamuna at the Sangam. The rivers are real, the moves were real, and the cities were real. The gods in this way become the symbolic language through which we have understood and told our own historical experience. They give meaning to the big changes, the successes, and the difficulties of our ancestors. The stories of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are not just tales from old books. They are the story of our own strength. They tell us how a civilization, facing a huge crisis like its life-giving river drying up, did not disappear. Instead, it changed, it moved, it transformed, and it was reborn, stronger and richer than before. The river Saraswati may have disappeared from the land, but it continues to flow in our memory, in our holy writings, and in our shared thoughts as the goddess of wisdom. The Ganga continues to flow right before our eyes, a real and spiritual lifeline for millions. This connection between the land, the people, and the divine is the unbroken thread of our civilization. It is a thread that has stayed whole through thousands of years of change. It reminds us that who we are is shaped by the mountains from which our rivers flow and the flat lands they feed. It is shaped by the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of our journey. These are not just bedtime stories. They are our instruction manual, our basic code, explaining who we are and how we got here. They connect every generation to the one that came before. In the end, the journey from Saraswati to Ganga is the story of India itself. It is a story of constant flow, of change, and of continuing on. It teaches us that to understand our present, we must listen to the echoes of our past. We must see the gods not just in temples, but in the patterns of history. We must see the rivers not just as bodies of water, but as witnesses to our long, unbroken journey. For in this ancient land, the rivers, the gods, and the people are and will always be eternally connected. Thank you.